Hi, this is Alonzo Bodden. I want to welcome you to episode 334 of my podcast, Who's Paying Attention? We're going to get right into it because my guest this week, okay, I'm going to tell you this, that in comedy, I was talking with Neil Brennan about this once. There are certain comics that, if not intimidating, you're just a huge fan of their work or the way they write or the way they do. This woman, her writing, your writing, constantly blows me away. I have always been a fan. I'm, you know, we run into each other in the greatest places, in the back of bars in West Hollywood. And your writing is fantastic, along with everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie Kilmartin is joining the podcast.
I'm a huge fan of you.
Thank you.
I love working with you. You're hilarious.
Here's a thing. Here's a bit of trivia you may or may not remember.
Okay.
We did New Faces together. 1997.
No.
I wanted to bring the program because I stumbled across it cleaning up my office a few months ago, and of course, you're running at the last minute. I'm going to send you. I'll send you a picture. But yeah, we did New Faces together back in '97 in Montreal.
Oh my God.
Yeah, KP Anderson was on it. Willie Barsain, a lot, but it was
Barsain, I remember seeing him in the gym, at the hotel gym, like shadow boxing. He's so funny.
I love him.
Yeah.
Love him. So that is our history.
Oh my God. Was Jimmy Dore our year too?
Yes, I think he was. Yes, he was. He was. Man, I'm going to find that program and I'll send you pictures of it because it was cool. We were young and naive, and the entire comedy world was ahead of us. We were all going to have sitcoms in 2 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know, but that was that was one of the first Montreals where they weren't giving out big deals at the end of it.
Right.
Like I think the guy Chicken got the last big deal.
Yeah, that
for
was like
$250,000.
2 years after us. Yeah.
After us? Oh,
that
really?
That was after us because I actually did get a deal out of Montreal. That is when I gave up the day job.
Okay.
Yeah, I gave up the day job. The same company gave a deal to me and Aisha Tyler.
Oh, nice.
I think hers worked better. Just, a little bit. But it's
just
all good.
A little.
It's all good. So I want to get right into this because I do want to talk topical stuff with you because besides being a fan of your writing, I love your Twitter because you're on top of issues and you have a great take on women's issues.
I do.
Well, now, the reason I say that is because it's not the stereotypical or it's not necessarily angry, even though the anger is in the humor.
Yeah.
But you cut people to pieces. There's blood on your Twitter feed.
Oh my God.
Where does that come from? What is that?
Isn't that just the way stand-up is, though? I mean, you want to draw blood, but you don't want people to know it until they've left the club, and then they look at their clothing and they're like, wait, why is everything red? Like you want them to have a good time, right?
Yeah. But it is you are very good at it. I'm hit and miss with Twitter. Sometimes I tweet and get into issues. Other times I'm just arguing about sports or some inane thing. And it doesn't really matter what you put on Twitter. Someone will hate you for it, right?
Yeah,
just
right.
Whatever you say.
Somebody had posted a house in McAllen, Texas, gigantic house for a very small amount of money, and this is the kind of house you can get McAllen. And it was all tile floors. So I said, why, something like, why is the entire house have bathroom floors? Because it was that shiny white, which I hate.
Right.
And then someone it's very common in Mexico. And growing up, I had that as well. I'm like, I'm not anti-Mexican. I just don't like those floors.
Yes, you are. You're a horrible
I'll let my Hispanic son know. It was exhausting.
No, you can't. That's why John Henson, a friend of mine, and I tell him all the time, I said, don't fight back, because he gets caught up.
I know.
And I'll catch myself every now and then I'll catch myself arguing with someone who has, I'm arguing with a bot that has 4 followers, but usually I don't. But he gets caught up. But you, again, I don't think you get caught up in it, but you have a way of shutting them down. Would that be?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, I guess it depends on the interaction. But yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say without looking at a direct interaction.
Right.
But
and we're not going to read your Twitter feed on the podcast. To those listening, it's Laurie Kilmartin. Find her on Twitter, and you will get what I'm talking about. So, dead people suck.
Yes.
You wrote a book, and you know, it's funny right now because they're like, oh, you can't do comedy anymore. You can't make fun of this or that or the other. Someone's going to cancel you, this or that. You were like, nah, that's too easy. I'll just pick a topic that no one can find funny, death near you, in the immediate family or close friend, and I'll write a funny book about that. Talk to me about, like, how did that come about? And it's great.
Thank you. It was released on Valentine's Day of 2018.
Perfect.
The same day as the Parkland mass shooting. So the publisher didn't even mention it in their feed. No one would tweet about it. So like only people that personally knew me actually bought the book and read it. And everyone else is like, it's a little, that title's a little rough right now, right? And I'm like, all right, I get it. Even though it's about, it's comedy about. It was my dad had died of cancer in 2014, and I did a comedy special called 45 Jokes About My Dead Dad, and I couldn't sell it. No one was buying it, and so I was like, all right, screw it. I'll write a book instead. And I had already written a book called Shitty Mom. Yeah. And it was basically 50 very short chapters that are just full of jokes, right, about parenting. And so I just pitched it as Shitty Mom about grief. And the publisher, I knew it was very like easy, And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So that's how it came about. It came about pretty easy for a book. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Did they do another publicity push later, like say, oh, this was a bad time, but now 6 months later, actually, I hate to say this, but a mass shooting, 3 weeks later, we've completely forgotten about it, and then we move on.
There's always, well, the other thing is my publisher was Rodale Press, and I guess in December of 2017, so a month and a half before it was published, they went bankrupt, and they were bought by Penguin Random House. And so it's kind of like with TV where a new person comes, is the head of a network, and they don't know these other projects, and they're not interested in them. I got the feeling it's the same thing with Penguin of like, all right, we bought this company, but this isn't our book. We probably wouldn't have okayed it, and there was a mass shooting. So there was never a mention of it. Yeah.
You just described my TV career. I've had that happen. So this is what's happened twice, and this ain't about me, but I'll just tell you because it's funny.
Please, I love comedy history.
I've never had a season 2. Okay, just so you know,
God.
I've had 4 season 1s. I've never had a season 2.
Oh my God.
And it was funny you talking about Aisha, because Aisha just does shows one after another. And I said to her, I've never had season 2. She's like, ooh, that's when it kicks in. That's when it gets good. Which, to let the audience know, that is how comics treat each other, okay? Just so you know. So I was on Speed Channel. I had a show called 101 Cars You Must Drive, and it was based on an article in Motor Trend, 365 cars you must drive. And people liked the show. Every show, I would drive 4 or 5 different cars, talk about them, joke about them, this and that.
That sounds like a win to me.
We did the first season, we did 49 cars. We had 51 to go.
Oh my God. How many cars per show?
We did like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Fox News shuts down Speed Channel. Just now we're pulling it. We're going
The whole channel's down?
Shuts down, gone. We're going to do baseball. So I'm out on that one. And then another one, I was with CNN, and we were developing, Headline News, HLN. Okay. We were developing a show. It was like a comedy news week recap kind of thing, and then just what you said, new executive comes in, clean the slate, that's all gone.
Yeah, right.
So it happens. Now you have a lot of TV writing experience, right? You wrote for Conan for the entire run on the West Coast,
TBS,
right? Yeah, the whole TBS
show,
West Coast run.
Yeah.
So this is what I want to ask you about writing jokes for TV and for hosts. What's it like when you write a killer joke and they either don't use it or they butcher it on delivery?
Oh, interesting. When they don't use it, sometimes I would just reformat it as a tweet if I could, because it's always topical. It's never anything I would use in my act. It's always something that's going to, dissipate in the next 24 hours anyway. So that was never a tragedy if they didn't use it. But if they fucked up the delivery. That does hurt. That does hurt.
You're like, that was mine.
That would have done well. Oh no.
Do you ever talk about that after the fact in the writer's room, or is there any place where you guys go where you like, okay, now we can let loose like what pissed us off today or this week or whatever?
Not really. You're always immediately you forget the show you just did, and it's because you have one tomorrow. So there's not a lot of looking back, especially at monologue jokes. You know, they just disappear into the.
So for the audience, and again, I like this because people are very critical of this stuff, right? That's not funny, this or that.
Yeah.
Try to describe how much work there is into just doing the monologue daily.
Oh, I mean, to get like an 8-joke monologue, I guess you'd look at least 120 jokes, right? So you have, 5 or 6 writers, maybe 3 or 4 writers, I don't know, depending on the setup. But kind of just churning out jokes all day, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad jokes in a pile of jokes. Like Brian Kiley, who's one of the greatest joke writers ever, is like, I only write 1 or 2 good ones a day. Yeah. And then you write other ones that are like, that'll work. That'll work, and that'll get the job done, and the audience will like it, and they might like it better than the good joke you wrote. But that's always the way it is.
So is that'll work difficult to do? Because I know, like for my act, it's never good enough, right? The jokes, it can always be, I can tweak it, or I can add this word, or do that, or they're laughing, but it really ain't that funny. All that stuff in our head. But when you're writing it like that, like how did you learn? Like, yeah, good enough. Move on to the next topic because I got to write 50 jokes today.
I guess again, it's the same thing of the each monologue only gets told once that day. There's no chance to perfect a joke or polish it or anything except for before you tell it. So it's nothing like stand up. I mean, we can work on jokes for 5-10 years, longer. Yeah. Sometimes you just don't get it. You put it away. You come back to it another time, and monologue jokes are just a day of, and then they're gone. So. I forgot your question.
How do you learn like good enough is good enough versus your stand-up act where, like you said, it's polishing to perfection? Oh,
I feel like when I say a joke's good enough, like I don't necessarily say like there's a 10-joke monologue, right? Am I cutting out, or is it just my headphones?
Aaron, do we know what the...
Yeah, it's just try not to touch that.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's all depends what the host wants. They might want a long time on stage that night, or maybe they've got a really great guest, so they want to get to it immediately. And then, they pick what they're comfortable talking about, and ideally you've written enough for them to pick through.
Right.
If there's days where you have like 5 really good joke writers, and we didn't give them enough. Mm-hmm. We just suck that day.
And is that when you say, "Hey, you're a comic, make up something. Your name's on the show. You're supposed to be brilliant. You do it."
No, you don't say that, Alonzo, ever.
See why I don't get a job? This is why I can't get jobs.
That's why you're podcasting.
Exactly. Because I'm telling Conan, "Hey, I thought you were funny. You need me for."
Well, I always look, and Kiley actually came up with this, but the monologue is the only time that the host is alone with the audience, pretty much, where they're not distracted by a guest or a sketch. They're talking to the crowd. Even if they have sidekicks, they have somebody on the left and right laughing. It's the only time that they're having like a stand-up right. comedy relationship with the crowd. And so the jokes are sort of, they're just like little ornaments, because basically your host is the prize, right? Yeah. That's the tree, and you got a couple of jokes that make them sparkle a little bit more or something.
So when it comes to writing, they say the hardest thing about writing is writing, to actually do it. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people like you should write a book. I'm like, yeah, but that's work. That's work. And I may do it one day, but it's that kind of writing, whether it be writing your books or writing jokes for other people, or being hired as a writer, because you've been hired as a writer in other shows, not just monologue jokes or anything. But is it difficult to get motivated to do that? How do you do that? How do you just say, okay, I'm going to write today, I'm working?
You know, when you're at a show, it's not difficult, you know, because you've got deadlines and stuff like that. And
let me stop you. You had to write to get the show. They didn't just pull you out of the...
Okay. Alonzo, when you're a single mother with a 3-year-old child and no health care, that can help you open a Word doc. It really can.
Incentive.
Yeah. Like now I have a novel that I started. I'm like, I got to 20,000 words, and I was like, all right, I'm 1/3 of the way through, and then I stopped writing. It's like, first, I kept telling myself, if you get to 20, you can get to 70. And when I got to 20, I just took a victory lap, and then, taxes, then all these little things come up that are take up my brain power. So when I don't have to write, it's very difficult to. For our stand-up, for our own act, I mean, I think we're compelled to write because we get bored with what we're talking about, or you tell a joke and you're like, oh, I know there's more here, and it's driving you crazy to keep doing the B version.
Right.
You'll sit down and try to crack it apart and get that A+ version that's there.
I love what you said about getting bored with it, because I've always been fascinated by the comics who, like, their act it's the same, you know, and you walk in, like I always say, you walk in at the 43rd minute, it's going to be the exact same thing.
I know.
And I always wonder, how does a new joke crack that rotation? And it'll be polished too. It'll be, you know, to their credit, like, it is tight as tight can be, perfectly polished, but it's like, don't you get bored? Didn't something happen today?
What happened to the part of you that just started and wanted new material? Right. But that seems like such a function of like 80s headliners. Like there were some classics, you know, like John Fox was a classic headliner that he had 45 minutes. It was word for word the same for decades.
Yeah. And
people came back to hear the same jokes. And television and all that kind of success, like the internet would have ruined him, right? I mean, he's not doing stand-up anymore. I don't know if he's alive, but yeah, I mean, it's a different. It's almost like they're kind of like the Catskills comics that just that came up with just an act and then just did it. Until...
Well, you could always tell by, like, there'd be the joke about the flashing 12 on the VCR.
Oh yeah, they
and
never update their references.
You know, we have laser discs now. We you know,
I love that. That cracks me up when they don't update their references.
I was just working with a guy, and he did a Buick reference in his joke, and I was like, you know, you might want to just throw Tesla in, like just say Prius instead of Buick.
No.
They still make Buicks, but that might not catch the youngsters.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, they just get in that rhythm and it works. And then there was like always a bunch of Southern acts that only worked the South.
Yeah.
Like, that guy James Gregory. Did you ever hear him? I never worked with them, but he was like a legend, you know, like he did the same act every place. He only worked the South, but he would sell out every single show. The merch off the charts. Just a different lifestyle.
It's like the Chitlin circuit in black comedy. There are black comics, and they're making, you know, 10, 15, 20 grand a week, and like you've never heard of them.
Oh my God.
But they're selling out everywhere they go, and people know them. And you know, God bless them. I mean, if you find a niche and it works and you're making that kind of money.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing colleges and I worked with this guy. He lived in St. Louis. And all he did was colleges, but
Buzz Sutherland?
Yes.
Oh my God, that guy's like a secret billionaire.
Right. Buzz is worth like $9 billion, and he never went to a comedy club. Right?
I know. He just wore that duck sweater and then did a Daffy Duck impression at colleges for 20 years.
He's got a mansion in St. Louis because you were talking about like real estate. Once you leave L.A., real estate doesn't cost anything.
Oh my God.
You buy the house for the down payment on the LA house. You buy the entire.
Seriously,
so he had
seriously.
this this had to be nearly 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And Buzz was the king of colleges and just happy.
Yeah. I mean, and he had a wife and kids. And
How do you, Laurie? You know me. You're like me. How the hell do the words comic and happy go together? That's not
I don't
supposed
know.
to happen.
Not at all. And colleges make you miserable.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Okay, tonight I got to drive 70 miles from point A to point B. And just to the listeners out there, the majority of colleges are in the middle of nowhere.
Not near an airport.
Nowhere. No,
Right.
you rent a car. Okay, so to my listeners, this is college. This is the life of a college comic. You fly to a major city, or as close to a major city as you can, maybe Charlotte. You rent a car. Now you have 7 schools in 5 days, because 2 of them are at noon in
Right.
the cafeteria where you're just, hi, we need you to annoy people while they eat.
Yeah.
But we're going to pay you well, but you're just going to annoy people who are getting in the lunch line or whatever. And then you'll come back at night at a different school where no one knows who you are, or somebody who is a gay Inuit is suddenly offended by a joke you did. Like
Yeah.
somebody in a very specific group is offended by a joke. So we're cutting the rest of your tour. You know?
And after every show, you need to go out with the girl
Yes.
who picked you at NACA and go to Applebee's and talk about comedy, I guess.
Applebee's, and if it's a good school, you might get a TGI Fridays, but usually you're going to get an Applebee's or an Applebee's adjacent local joint.
Yeah.
You know, and you're 10 years older than anyone there, and this is a thing. Now I don't know how it is for a woman being on the road, but I was out there after Vince Champ.
Oh my God.
Okay,
Vince.
Vince Champ was a
my
college
God.
comedian who happened to be a serial rapist.
Yes.
And as a result, my agent was like, you do not look at them. You do not touch them.
Oh,
you
my
do not. He
God.
was like, because, you know, it
Did
wasn't.
your agent also represent Vince Champ?
No, this was just something with colleges in general.
So
He was
Vince,
just like,
Vince would go to a college. He would, I worked with him at the San Francisco Comedy Competition,
oh,
right?
so you knew him. Okay.
I did know
I
him.
didn't know him. He was,
I
yeah.
got no rape vibes from him, by the way, because he's super clean and Mr. Whatever. But he was a brilliant sociopath, I guess, if you
Right.
can not give off those vibes and be that person. He would attack a woman in like a music studio where it was soundproofed and you could not hear her cries, and then he would leave town and go to the next gig, and because no one was connecting the dots and there's no internet back then, no one
Yeah.
figured out it was happening for a really long time.
Yeah, he's still in prison.
Yeah, he
I don't
is.
think
I
he's
think
ever
so.
getting out.
I doubt it.
Because it was more than one state. It was like he had to do time in one state, and then
Oh, wow.
another state he had charges there. So I think it's in Nebraska that he's doing a ton of time.
Wow.
But
Well, if he gets out, he'll get work at certain comedy clubs before I will. I know that because I look at their calendars.
and that is something I do want to talk to you about, because it is ridiculous. And you know something, we'll just go right into it. The disrespect toward women in comedy is horrendous.
Yeah.
And you deal with it and you talk about it, which I love the fact you talk about it. The most insane thing I heard regarding that, okay, because I remember, like, it was right around 99, 2000 where they were all like, women aren't funny, like that routine.
That
right?
whole
And then-
came off of that Christopher Hitchens article in
right,
Vanity Fair.
right, and it was, well, you've never met the women that I work with, because they're some of the funniest people in the biz, right?
Yeah.
And then this is, about 3 or 4 years ago, we're in Montreal and we're talking. It was me, Wanda, Kira, Sultanovich, and I can't remember who the fourth was. It might have been Gina Yashre. I don't remember, but we were
wow.
talking about it. And I was saying that in my naivete, I was like, oh, well, they're past that. Women, when I say past it, I
Yeah.
don't mean completely past. I mean, it wasn't the talk. Like it had been a topic. In other words, it was like, oh, women aren't funny. And then you didn't hear about it. And in my naivete, I'll say that I was like, well, they figured out women are funny, so they're not still talking about it. And Wanda told me that someone told her that she was funny for a woman. They said that to Wanda Sykes, okay?
Right.
Wanda Sykes is funny for a human. Like, and there's there's nobody in comedy. Like, you go to Chris Rock, what do you think of Wanda? I ain't following her. You know what I mean? Wanda's brilliant. You're brilliant as a comic. And yet,
Thanks.
this is what I've heard from women. and since I heard it, I've seen it to be true. There are never two women on a show.
It's very rare. I mean, Jackie Cation and I have a podcast together, and one of the things we complain about is we never met, even though we started stand-up almost the exact same time, because they would never book women together. So every female comic in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s was always the only woman on the bill, always. And it gets old. I mean, if you were only working with female comics, after a while you'd be like, I just want to have a conversation with someone who's sort of like me. So that's one thing. But I mean, if you just look at comedy club calendars, you can see the sexism. They brag about it when they email their calendars out to customers, you know?
So, and I know this is a ridiculous question, but see, I've been in this position with black people where I have to represent all black people on earth. So right now I'm asking you to represent all women in comedy. What's it gonna take? What cracks this? What?
I don't know. I'm mystified. It's not the way popular culture is now, and it seems like so many clubs are run by older guys or not just guys, but people that their brains are stuck in 1994 or something. I'm just, I subscribe to a lot of comedy club emails just out of curiosity, and I'm just like, wow, this club, I cannot get any traction from this guy. And in this one case, there was back to back was a guy accused of rape in the LA Times. And so, it's been vetted by 1,000 lawyers. And then another accused of grooming a teenager. They're working back to back. And I'm like, what do I have to do? I don't know.
Well,
it's clear what I have to do.
Yes,
and so I need you and I need to go to a back room.
In trouble, and it's gonna be,
no, I'll have to attack you, Alonzo.
That I'd be willing, and that's what takes
that's
away from it. It's like, geez, another one who thinks it's a gift. No, but here's the thing, because I run into it on a different way, but. One of the things is asses in seats, right? They always talk about who puts asses in seats. Well, there are women who put asses in seats. There are women who are on TV, who have TV shows, who have, Netflix specials, this or that. And still there is that resistance to it. And how, you seem to handle it pretty well. Like, you're not bitter all the time, right?
Right.
And so, but how do you handle that? How do you,
Well, I guess sometimes I look at other, I wouldn't be able to bring in the same amount as some guy comics, right? But then I look at these other people, I'm like, yeah, I could do as well as this person. So how come it seems like they're more comfortable taking a chance on a white guy than they are on a female comic, with all things being equal in terms of what you think that they can bring. And the other thing is it takes a while to get popular in a market, right? Like, you got to go there once, and then you come back in a year, and you start to build your own audience.
And they don't let us do that anymore.
They won't take the chance on someone that they haven't taken the chance on before. A lot of them.
Yeah. So I want to get into the topical stuff, but I want to comment on that, because Chris Rock said something about that was very profound. He said, it's not the first one. He's talking about black people. He's like, when it's equal, when we get to suck. He said, it's not like when you have a Jackie Robinson. He's like, no, when you get a guy who's batting 200, but still in baseball, that's when we're good. When there's a black guy who plays, because you see the white guy who sucks, right? And so what you're talking about, and I've seen this too, like, can I be as not funny as him? Yeah. And still somehow work, and my friend Matt Kazam, great comic in Vegas, old friend. We used to go on the road together and stuff. We got that friend. We got crazy stories and all that. But he says something. He's a student of this, and he loves comedy. And he'll say, like, I'll go up. There'll be a big star, and you've had this too. The big stars on the show, but they put us on the show, make sure it's funny. So you got to have somebody.
Oh, yeah, right.
And Matt will be in the back mad at the audience and be like, see, you've never seen this shit done right. Now that you've seen it done the right way, you will stop endorsing. And you're one of them, though. You're one of them. When people see you, it's like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be done. It's not loud.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to yell at me. She doesn't have to repeat the same thing 15 times. She's just talking, and not only am I laughing, like you said, on the way home, I'm actually thinking about what she said. Like, you do this thing right. Is it frustrating, the lack of respect that gets?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the old art versus commerce, right? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, I just did Corden last week, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a really good set.
Yeah.
And then I asked my manager about like a club, no, I haven't heard back. I'm like, what do I have to do?
You mean I just did my late night TV and you?
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, it's perfect, technically perfect. And I'm like, is anything? No, so that doesn't work either. Like, I honestly don't know what'll work. I don't get it.
When did you start?
87.
87. Oh, so you were around for some of the 80s boom.
Yeah. Right,
you were
right,
around
right.
for
San
like
Francisco.
the tail end of. So that's where the heat was.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, within like 2 hours driving me, there were like, if I remember correctly, 13 full-time comedy clubs.
Yeah.
So if you got started as an MC, you could always make $200 a week.
Right.
In 89, right. That wasn't bad.
Yeah. No, because I started in 93. And George Wallace always reminds me that I missed out on the money. He was like, you could have made some. You was good. You could have made some money. I did. You didn't.
Oh,
but
that's
you could
hilarious.
have.
I heard about that money. Alex Reed, I remember, he's such a funny guy, and he ended up writing for the show with Will Arnett and Jason Bateman, Arrested Development. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was an improv feature, like in the early '90s, and it was like, yeah, he's getting $800 a week plus airfare.
Yeah, they used to pay features.
They don't pay features all the time, even now. Like they'll just use local comics for their scene. And so if someone wants to feature for you, it's like they're not going to put you up. Or I mean, I don't know how comics now with 15 minutes are going to build to comics with 30 minutes because there's no money in featuring.
Right. They have to develop it on their own. I had one guy who was traveling with me, and he had some connection with airlines that he could fly free. Like someone in his family got him buddy passes and stuff.
Right.
So he was like, hey, man, you just get me on. I can get there wherever, because that's the big expense, right?
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was a feature, I was driving all over. That's what you did. People used to ask me what was the best advice I got in comedy. He said, someone told me get a reliable car, because you will be driving 1,000 miles to make $200.
Oh yeah, I got a Chevy Blazer and it was like 1990, and I was like, everyone will think I'm a guy on the road, so I can sleep in my Blazer. I won't have to pull over and get a hotel all the time. And I used to pull over like in a Denny's parking lot and sleep because I figured it would be safe there. Never went to a rest area or anything. But I drove to Chicago, and I had like 6 weeks of MC work in Chicago, and annoyingly to comics that were trying to get work, I'm like, I'm just out here, please. I'm staying with my grandpa, But yeah, I drove out there, did a bunch of work, and then came back, and yeah.
I did one of those. I had to drive to Texas, pick up the headliner at the airport, and then do a lap of Texas.
Oh my God!
And I remember the big gig on it was a club called Froggy Bottoms in Lubbock.
I never worked it, but I remember it, and I sent them my tape, and they never got back to me.
That was the big closer to get to do Froggy Bottoms.
Well, that was a Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a weekend room.
I'm talking to the listeners now. Early in your comedy career, you can't wait to work weekends. You want to work weekends. Then you get in, then you start working, then you're, oh my God, what's it like to have a weekend off? Right? You get a Saturday night off, you're like, what do people do?
I know.
Where do civilians go on Saturday?
Well, to me, Maria Bamford and Doug Benson have figured it out, right? Doug only does shows at 4:20 in the afternoon.
Right.
So he can go in any club that's got a headliner working that night and just do the afternoon show and make a fuckload of money and then get out of town.
But you do have to be willing to consume mass quantities of marijuana.
He seems to be okay with that.
He's okay with that. I couldn't hang with Doug.
And then Maria will come in and do like Tuesday, Wednesday or something like that, where they have a different comic will be doing the weekend, and she'll fucking clean up on those nights,
I think the thing with Maria, though, is the average weekend, like Saturday night comedy date, they'd be confused. It's just too. Like,
she's definitely drawing her fans on those nights.
Love it. If
you're getting people just wandering to comedy that haven't seen her before, sometimes there's resistance. Maybe, yeah.
And no, she's brilliant, but she's uniquely brilliant.
Yes.
And so if they're just looking for, I need some dick jokes. And it's like, no, this isn't that. This is I love Maria. We were at Omnipop together.
Oh, cool.
A long time ago, and I got to know her. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, and she kind of has done things before the rest of us, in terms of like figuring out her audience and then going to it. And she was doing like something akin to Zoom shows before the pandemic, where she would just be like, I need to rehearse, I have a show tonight, and she would do her act in the phone to somebody. And it was like, that's amazing.
The confidence.
Yes.
The confidence to know who you are at that level is amazing.
Because then you're free. Then you're like, I do this, and so how can I best facilitate me doing this? Versus, okay, I'll try this. I feel like I've been that like rabbit model of, all right, I'll try this. And, at some point you do kind of know who you are, but it seemed like she knew earlier than a lot of comics what she was and how to best
I think I love stand-up too much.
Yeah.
Because that's all I want to do. So all that other stuff, I'm like, Like, I love hosting, but the other stuff, I'm like, really? I'm not, I'm not going to be like, I used to get these auditions for like Nickelodeon Dad. And I'm like, you know what? Rondell Sheridan's got that locked up. There's no reason for me to go down there. Because Rondell is the Nickelodeon Dad, or so, God. They would send.
Plus, his act supports it. He's squeaky clean. Yeah, it's great for him.
Yeah, they would. It just got to a point like, listen, if it's not a bouncer or a criminal, why am I wasting people's time?
Well, the other thing, like I remember, I worked with Etta May at the club in Akron that Lisa Grigsby used to have.
Jokers.
Yes, and Etta would like at the end of the night, she put out her email list cards and she'd collect them, and then she would manually log in everyone's email, and she slowly, and Lisa Lampanelli did that same thing, built up a database of people, and that's what I mean, like of going, like Etta May was not going to try to be like a hip alt comic in LA. She's like, I'm gonna this is the market I'm gonna work, this is the audience I'm after, how do I reach them? That's what I kind of meant about like finding out.
I didn't do the I talk to young comics now about marketing because I didn't do it. I thought that it would happen.
Me too.
And because we came up at the tail of end of when it did happen.
We were lied to.
Yeah. They said all you have to do is get on the Tonight Show, get on TV, and kick back. And
it's like telling someone they have to go to Harvard to become a welder. Like, oh no, you didn't, and you don't have to. I'm sorry, you're $200,000 in debt now, but actually you just had to go to welding school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What? Oh, I was told differently.
So I want to get into this. And since I'm talking to a woman and you're speaking on behalf of all women,
I accept that responsibility.
The Kamala Harris thing on CNN, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. They did this article, they did this whole thing. They're basically trying to say there's trouble in the White House between Biden's people and Kamala Harris's people. Okay, in my opinion, this is like one of these high school things where they're trying to break up BFFs. But this is where, and I'm not one of these, mainstream media, this or that, but this is what angers me about the news when it's not the news. This is actually from the article, okay? This is a quote. Harris is the first vice president in decades to come into office with less Washington experience than the president. Were they not around for the Trump administration? Did they completely miss the fact we had two idiots that had never been to Washington?
And Dan Quayle? What? That's ridiculous.
This is the kind of thing. So, and they go into the racial aspect. They go into the fact this is the first woman to be in this position, the first woman of color, this or that. Again, when I say, how do you argue with the ridiculous? I don't think there's a problem between Biden and Kamala Harris. You never hear from the vice president. The only time we heard from the vice president was Cheney, and that was because they'd send Bush on a bicycle ride, and Cheney and Karl Rove would plot to take over the world.
Right, exactly. I mean, I just feel like the political media is so bad. Like, ProPublica is really great, and then everyone else, they're still both sidesing everything and acting like Republicans are normal and not this like fascistic. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm.
No, please.
But you know what I mean? Like,
listen, my
they're
listeners
not the same
know.
anymore.
My listeners know, and I talk about this all the time. The big problem is this false equivalency.
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, MSNBC and Fox News are not the same.
No.
MSNBC is, if it's 20% left, Fox News is 95% right, and
Yeah.
Fox News will just make up a story.
Yeah, right. And they ignore lots of other stories. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think they're fine. I mean, she's 56 or 57, and he's 80 something, right?
Yeah, he's going to be 80. Well, they're talking. And this is what's funny. So they've been in office since January, so 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
But they're always already talking about, well, she's going to be the candidate in 2024 or not.
Well, he said he would only do one term.
Right, but
now, is he going to? I doubt that he'll give up his power.
I think it's a little early for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think
completely.
we might want to get gas below $5 a gallon before we have that fight.
Right.
It's
yeah. It was nice. We got like a couple months off from political emails and people asking for money, and then like the last month or two, hey, I'm coming up against a deadline. Could you chip in $5? Oh my God! And what state are you in?
They're like homeless people.
Oh.
They're like, Laurie, do you have any spare change?
I know.
Do you have any spare change for my next campaign in 2028? I'm trying to build up now.
And then you click on the $5 and then it takes you, and the default is $7. And then you want to do it every month? Okay, just uncheck this box.
Do you want to pay the fee? There's a fee from, the whatever collection. Could you pitch in $1 to cover the credit card charges? And no, you bum.
Well, I also I donate a lot of money to candidates who didn't win last, like Senate candidates, like Amy McGrath and Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, where I'm like, no brainer. Of course you would elect him, not Lindsey Graham, not realizing, I'm not a South Carolinian. I don't know what they like or what they are thinking or what they're, I have no idea.
There, and they're electing Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
Even after, and they elect you for 2 terms after you die. I mean, Strom Thurmond just lost. So
I feel like I don't know other states really. So I'm really, really going to be careful before I donate a lot, to races where it's not an incumbent that it's just trying to win re-election.
Do you, speaking of that, do you pick up the vibe when you're on the road in different states and different towns?
I haven't been on the road too much right now, obviously, but I am coming up on some road work. So I'll be in Texas at the Creek and Cave the week after Thanksgiving. So I'll let you know if Beto has a shot at defeating Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, Texas is so weird because it's turning blue in places. Like Austin isn't Texas. Austin is Austin.
Yeah.
And parts of Dallas, North Dallas is not Texas, but it's the red is holding on tight and rewriting the rules.
Yeah, so they stay in power. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of the right, they have a big problem with Sesame Street. This is something that, there's no grown up to say, hey, stop watching Sesame Street. We got problems in this country to work on. So Matt Schlapp, who's a lobbyist and runs some big conservative.
He and Mercedes Schlapp, his wife, are the worst.
So you know who they are, right?
Yes.
So they say that Sesame Street should be defunded. Okay, the whole PBS. They haven't heard about HBO and that deal or anything. But anyway,
yeah. It
should all be shut down because they have an Asian Muppet. They brought in an Asian Muppet. She's Korean, and Sesame Street said we did this because there's been so much anti-Asian hatred with the China virus and all of that stuff.
Right.
And he's like, well, we don't know what race Bert and Ernie are. And then they got mad at, famously, Ted Cruz, who really has nothing else to do, and I think Rubio, but they got mad at Big Bird for being vaccinated. And because I love stupidity, I looked into this. Big Bird was doing vaccination commercials in 1972 when everyone got vaccinated because we didn't think it would make us magnetic.
Yeah.
How do you, as a comic, and you work as a topical writer, how do you write something funnier than someone saying that Sesame Street should be defunded because Big Bird got vaccinated or there's an Asian Muppet and it's the worst thing that ever happened? How do you write a joke funnier than that?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, it's those are those stories where I'm like, oh, I hate this story because it feels like everyone's gonna write the same joke, and it feels like it's the same story every 4 years. You know, I'm sure there was a gay Muppet a while ago, and just different senators had the same complaint. It feels like control, like just a repeating pattern of stupidity and cynicism. You know, they're just fundraising, and they're not going to defund NPR or, Sesame Street. So I always hated those stories, actually, because I just felt like I'm being played right now. Like, you guys are playing a game. You actually want, comedians to joke about you to get the traffic up. Like, you're forcing me to participate in this stuff.
But we have to, right, to some extent. Like with Trump, after the first year, I hated doing Trump jokes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, it's just the same thing. He's an idiot. And I have a saying, stupid don't get tired, right? It works every day. But you couldn't not do it because everybody, because it was right there. Like, I wouldn't do the whole thing. Like, you talk about NPR, on Wait, they actually passed a rule, no more than one Trump joke each, because they were like, because otherwise the whole show will be about this idiotic White House. So we have to acknowledge it, right? Even like I just talked about it, I don't like to, and I'm going to hit you with some Ted Cruz also, only because I love when Twitter takes over, when the internet takes over. I love it. But do we have to acknowledge these stories since everyone's talking about it? Do you have to do a joke about it? I think I do. But I don't have to do a whole act on it.
Oh, I mean, I left that one alone. That was one of those where it just felt too large, like too on purpose, too manufactured by Twitter journalists, But I can,
but they're the ones with the science, Laurie.
True. So that kind of stuff I'm very resistant to, and I don't put it in my act or anything. Like, even Ted Cruz is, I'm just, there's nothing new or exciting there, It's the same guy that's just going to say the same kind of lame, gross stuff. And so to me, it's not interesting to even make fun of him, The reason I make fun of Ted Cruz, not a lot, but on occasion, is because he doesn't even realize how dumb he sounds sometimes. He's one of those people, I say they used to do this on Living Color. Damon Wayans was great with it, with that character, the black guy who was like the street lawyer who would use words he didn't understand. Yeah.
Your Honor, on the day in question, per se, the man,
Yeah, right.
Like that's Ted Cruz. Like, I'm going to try to say something and it's going to be the dumbest thing. So I don't know if you heard about this. So, and I say, I don't know if you heard about it. You've heard about it. But Biden's going to Nantucket for family for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So Ted Cruz just puts, there once was a man from Nantucket, right? And people are like, stupid, what you're saying is that Joe Biden has a big dick. Like, do you understand? And to my listeners, I will give you the limerick in case you...
I forgot the limerick.
There once was a man from Nantucket. Now I got to look up the whole limerick. Oh, there once was a man from Nantucket whose dick was so long he could suck it. He said with a grin, wiping cum from his chin, if my ear were a pussy, I could fuck it. Yes, it's disgusting,
Goodness,
people.
I've never heard that.
That is the limerick, and there's different versions, but that's
I think I heard another version.
That's the filthy version. Yeah, I know filth, and I'm sorry, I should have given you a warning before I said that, people. But that's the thing.
Okay.
It's basically a big dick joke, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like, stupid. You're complimenting him, and did you forget that you ran to Cancun when your constituents were freezing to death?
I feel like the whirlwind around him helps him. And so even when you're calling him stupid and when you're pointing out the thing he did, it's still, then he gets to complain about the conservative media or comedians, or, you know what I mean? Like, I feel it all helps them. What doesn't help them is when there's no whirlwind around them, when they're ignored.
You think, and this could very well be true, but it doesn't work for him. I don't think he's as, like I always said about Sarah Palin, right? People are like, oh, she's dumb. I'm like, she's dumb on issues. She's a master manipulator of the media. She keeps her name in the news. Donald Trump knows nothing about issues, policy, whatever. Led the news every day, knew how to do that. Ted Cruz doesn't seem to be that smart when it comes to manipulating the media because he manipulates it in a way to make himself look stupid, which is not something they did. They didn't do, like, you could make fun of them. He makes fun of himself by...
Yeah, but is that helpful in Texas? For Republicans in Texas, it's like, well, they're calling me stupid. That actually works because he's not stupid. He went to Harvard. I think I know he went to Harvard. He may have gotten a law degree someplace else as well. So he's actually an elite. And so
they all are.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, he has to pretend to be dumb or to get mad at elites so that to deflect from the fact that he is one. So it might work for him. He keeps getting reelected.
Yeah, well, it's just be a Republican in Texas and you wave a gun and you tell women their place, which we didn't even go down that, rabbit hole, the Texas abortion law, which I'll tell you what I loved about that. And this is what I love about, I don't even know what generation they are, the ones that come after Z.
Yeah, I know that my son is Z. I'm like, who's coming up after these guys?
But your son is in Z. They destroy them with TikTok and the internet because they don't understand how it works. So they had that Texas law where you could report anyone who helped someone get an abortion. And they were like, oh, we're going to crash every site we have because they know how to, because, you can't mess with these kids with the internet. They're good. I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking to that and you having a son, what country are we going to have in 20, 30, 50 years? Do you have any idea?
It is so worrisome. I don't know what we're leaving these guys, It really does. It stresses out my son. Like, they joke about climate change kind of the way we probably joked about nuclear war with Russia or something like that. But that went away. That, at least the fear of that sort of Cold War thing went away. But this is just getting worse and worse. And I really don't know. But I do have a climate change chunk that I think will really change the world. So
all right. Well, then it's worth it. Listen.
All the comedians can do is come up with jokes about it.
We may lose the Arctic, but she got a bit, right? And anything that happens, you're like, well, I got a bit out of it, so it can't be all bad.
I know.
I got a bit.
It's weird because we feel so powerful on stage, but actually we're the least effective people.
Yeah,
we get nothing done.
I have a whole thing about context. I have, transgender, and the people are like, oh, that's really smart. It's like, yeah, go tell somebody. Go tell somebody. Please. Or better yet, tell somebody that you hate me, because that would even be better.
I know.
So I'm just starting to do this. So you're going to be the second guest I have that I'm doing this with.
Okay.
Give me some good news. I am eternally cynical. I laugh. We're surrounded by and pounded with stupidity day in and day out. Give us some good news. And it could be anything. It could be personal. It could be broad. It's society, culture.
I think what's good news is a lot of people are quitting their jobs that they hate and going, I just don't want to live like this anymore. And I think the labor shortage is good news because it's actually a wage problem. It's not a labor shortage. And when people pay more, they can hire people. So I think that's good. I think it's great that people are in a place where they can just go, I quit. I'm not going to work for $15 an hour anymore.
I think that's great. And you're right. This is another one where the news, it's all in how you spin it, right? It's like, no, there's no labor shortage. I'll tell you the labor problem. I read this somewhere, and they said the problem is, the genius, I should say, is the guy who makes $700 an hour has convinced the guy who makes $25 an hour that the problem is the guy who makes $7 an hour.
I know. I can't.
And that's what they've done.
It's since the beginning of the country.
Yeah. But it got worse after the 80s.
Yeah.
And I was I was working aerospace in the 80s. Okay?
Really?
Yeah. So wow. I was there when Reagan broke the aerospace unions. Those were the first ones that he did away with. And then it snowballed from there, and manufacturing disappeared and stuff. But that was a time when, like they said, there was a time when your boss made 30 times what you made. Now he makes 300 times what you make. And so what you said, see how I took your good news and made it bad news? See what I do? This is why I need you to give me good news. It's not a worker shortage. Like you said, it's a wage shortage. And it is good that people are realizing, you know what, my life and my time is worth more. And that story of people don't want to work is bullshit. They want to work, but yeah, you got to get paid.
Yeah, there was some story, like everyone at one particular Wendy's quit, and the manager had worked 80-hour weeks for an ungodly amount of weeks at $15 per hour, and they were just like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. You know?
Yeah, it's great that people are realizing their value. And then there are companies, like there's a company in Seattle, I can't remember the name of it, but the CEO said, I'm going to pay everyone $70,000 a year.
Dan Price.
Right, from the janitor to everybody. And they said, you're going to go bankrupt. You're going to, and he's prospered.
Yeah.
His people are loyal and hardworking because now they can actually buy a home or a car, or they can live.
Yeah. Yes, that's true from what I've read. And I've also read there's some problematic stuff with him and his ex-wife. So,
well, I'm talking about the wage side.
Yes.
So I don't know. Do you think Jeff Bezos could get by on $180 billion?
Yeah, I don't understand that kind of greed. You know, it's like how can you have that kind of money and then not pay and have people dying of heart attacks in your facility, you know, because they're working so hard in such heat. I don't get it. Like, what's wrong with their brains? What's wrong with his brain?
I honestly don't know. And his wife, like, she's just been giving away money since the divorce, and not little amounts, like millions and millions of dollars. Oh, you're a university? Here's $50 million. Yeah. What the hell? I still got $100 billion left. You know.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. But we're liberal elites. Right, so we don't understand.
I'm a college dropout, but you're not, right?
I didn't even go.
Oh, see, we are elites.
No, we are the liberal elite. I'm giving you $50,000 to do this podcast, and then we walk out and we get into our Bentleys.
Sure.
It's so funny because the people calling you elite are richer than you'd ever hope to be.
Oh, right? I know. That's a Ted Cruz model right there. Yes. And his wife works for Goldman Sachs, and it's so gross.
It's insane, and we're the comics.
Yeah,
you know, we're the and we're not even. It'd be different if we were the rich comics.
Yeah.
Right? If we were the multi-million, and
those are, you know what? I'm finding out those are mostly the improv performers. Something about
acting.
Improv, like I guess you have to have a lot of money to go through all of the classes that they have and stuff.
Right.
Like stand-up is so brutal the first couple of years that if you have money, you'd be like, why am I doing this?
It has to be, though.
Yeah. It does. I agree that it does have to be, but it seems like it's interesting that comics that are secretly billionaires come from improv because it's a cushier way to start than just doing open mics, you know, and hanging out at a club for 3 minutes and material to do 3 minutes for 2 years, right?
I have a friend who was a brilliant close-up magician. And those guys make a ton of money. They get hired to go to a convention and get 20 grand to entertain people in the booth. And he's one of these guys.
Yeah.
And he's sort of funny and decided he wanted to be a comic. And I was like, the hell's wrong with you? And Laurie, he was driving to open mics in a convertible Mercedes SL.
No.
And he worked his way down to a Camry. I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. He worked, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, and the thing was, I love it. It's like,
can you just be a funny magician?
Exactly. Go do magic. Tell
your jokes while you're stealing money from people. What are you doing?
I don't know. I love stand up, and I've been lucky enough
down to a Camry. Yeah. That's so funny.
I've been lucky enough to make a great living at it. I tell people, listen, I'd love to have a few million in the bank for the security, but I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
And, I'm okay. So I'm very happy with it. I'm happy with the support, and most of all, I am happy you made it. I loved having you here.
Thanks
Honestly,
for having me,
you are.
Alonzo. It was a lot of fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie Kilmartin, okay, Kilmartin, okay.
And we have a new album out. It's called Corset.
Corset, look
Yeah.
for her new album. Go to her website, look for everything. Follow her on Twitter. I'm telling you, will be happy you did. She is super smart and super funny. And thank you so much for being here. You talked about Thanksgiving. Tell them again your Thanksgiving gig, and then I'll tell them mine, and we'll go do Thanksgiving gigs.
I am at the Creek and Cave in Austin, Texas, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Okay, and I will be at the Arlington Draft House, which has become my annual gig in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, okay,
on
cool.
Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving.
I thought we were both
And-
in Texas for a second.
No.
Yeah.
There is one in Austin. And this weekend, I'm going to be doing Supernova Comedy in Hollywood Friday and Saturday night. So you'll be able to see me. Laurie, thank you again for coming. This is Alonzo, episode 334. Who's Paying Attention? We are done.
Woo.
That was awesome.
Thanks. That was fun, man.